If you're waking up tired, even after getting what should be enough sleep, you're not imagining it. A lot of people assume that if they're still exhausted, they must not be sleeping well enough, long enough, or correctly. So they try to go to bed earlier, fix their routine, or push themselves to be more disciplined. And when none of that works, frustration sets in. Because the question becomes, why am I still tired when I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do? For many people, the exhaustion starts before the day even begins. You wake up already drained. The thought of getting through the day feels heavy, and no amount of coffee seems to touch the kind of tiredness you're carrying. That kind of fatigue isn't about sleep alone. It's the kind of tired that lives deeper in the body, the kind that doesn't go away with a nap, the kind that makes simple tasks feel bigger than they should. And when that keeps happening, it's easy to turn the frustration inward, to wonder if something is wrong with you, to question your motivation, to assume you're just not built the way other people are. But that assumption misses something important. Being tired all the time doesn't automatically mean you're lazy, unmotivated, or doing life wrong. Very often, it means your body has been using energy in ways you don't consciously see, long before your head hits the pillow. In this video, we're going to talk about why sleep alone doesn't always restore energy, what chronic tiredness is really signaling, and why feeling exhausted can make perfect sense once you understand how the body responds to long-term stress. If this already sounds familiar, stay with me. You're not behind, and you're not broken. Why sleep doesn't fix fatigue? Sleep is important, but sleep and recovery are not the same thing. Many people are doing everything they're told to do. They're going to bed earlier, they're getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep, some are even tracking their sleep and seeing numbers that look good, and yet the exhaustion remains. That's because sleep doesn't automatically equal restoration. When the body is under ongoing stress, sleep often becomes lighter and less restorative, even if it lasts for several hours. The body may fall asleep, but the nervous system doesn't fully power down. It stays partially alert, ready to respond, just in case. This is why people can sleep through the night and still wake up feeling like they barely rested at all. Stress changes how sleep functions. Breathing can stay shallow, muscles don't fully relax, the mind may keep processing beneath the surface even without conscious thoughts. And when the body doesn't reach deeper states of rest, energy doesn't get replenished the way it's meant to. This kind of fatigue can be confusing because from the outside it looks like you should feel fine, but the body doesn't measure rest by time alone. It measures rest by safety. If the nervous system doesn't feel safe enough to let go, sleep becomes more like a pause than a reset. Another reason sleep doesn't always fix fatigue is that exhaustion often isn't caused by one bad night. It's caused by long periods of emotional, mental, or physical strain. Sleep can help maintain energy, but it doesn't always reverse depletion that's built up over time. This is why focusing only on sleep can feel frustrating. You keep adjusting routines, looking for the perfect formula, and wondering why nothing seems to change. Understanding this shifts the question from why can't I sleep better to what's keeping my body from fully recovering. Once you see fatigue this way, it becomes clear that being tired all the time isn't a personal failure. It's a signal that something deeper needs attention, not more effort. And that understanding opens the door to looking at tiredness through a much more compassionate lens. What chronic tiredness really is. Chronic tiredness is often misunderstood because it doesn't always look dramatic. There isn't always a clear cause you can point to. There's no single moment where everything suddenly went wrong. Instead, it builds quietly. Chronic tiredness isn't the same as being sleepy, and it isn't the same as being lazy or unmotivated. It's the body responding to long-term energy demand by trying to conserve what it has left. When the body senses that energy is being used faster than it can be restored, it adapts, it slows things down, it reduces enthusiasm, it limits output, not as punishment, but as protection. This is why chronic tiredness often comes with symptoms that don't seem directly related to sleep. Things like brain fog, difficulty concentrating, emotional flatness, losing interest in things you used to enjoy, feeling overwhelmed by tasks that once felt manageable. From the outside, it can look like a motivation problem, but internally, it's an energy management problem. The body is constantly making calculations you're not aware of. It's deciding how much energy can safely be spent without causing harm. And when it determines that resources are low, it starts pulling back in subtle ways. That pullback is often what people interpret as something being wrong with me. But in reality, it's the body trying to keep you functioning. This kind of tiredness doesn't respond well to pressure. Pushing harder doesn't restore energy. It just confirms to the body that demand is still high, so the system stays cautious. That's why people can want to do things and still feel unable to follow through. The desire is there, the intention is there, but the energy simply isn't available in the way it used to be. Seeing chronic tiredness through this lens changes the conversation. Instead of asking why you're struggling, the question becomes, what has my body been carrying for so long that it finally had to slow things down? That shift matters because it replaces judgment with understanding. And understanding is the first step toward rebuilding energy in a way that lasts. Mental versus physical energy drain. When people think about exhaustion, they usually picture physical effort, moving, lifting, working, doing. But for many people, physical activity isn't what's draining their energy the most. It's mental and emotional load. Mental energy is spent every time you make decisions, solve problems, monitor situations, manage expectations, or anticipate what might go wrong. Emotional energy is spent when you hold space for others, stay composed under pressure, or suppress your own needs to keep things running. And unlike physical effort, mental and emotional work doesn't always have clear start and stop points. You can sit still all day and still be completely drained. Decision fatigue plays a big role here. From the moment you wake up, your mind is making choices. What to do first, how to respond, what needs attention, what can wait. Even small decisions add up when they happen continuously, without pause. There's also the background mental noise many people carry. Worrying about responsibilities, replaying conversations, planning ahead, staying alert for problems. All of that uses energy, even if nothing is happening outwardly. This is why rest can feel ineffective when exhaustion is primarily mental. You might stop moving, but the mind keeps working. And as long as the mind stays active, the body doesn't fully shift into recovery mode. Physical tiredness often improves with sleep or rest. Mental exhaustion needs something different, relief from constant processing. This is also why motivation can disappear even when someone isn't physically worn out. Motivation relies on available energy. When mental and emotional reserves are low, the drive to act naturally decreases. None of this means you're weak or unfocused. It means you've been spending energy in ways that aren't always visible, and those forms of effort count. Understanding the difference between physical and mental energy helps explain why traditional advice doesn't always work. Telling someone to just rest doesn't address what's actually draining them. Once you see how much energy mental load requires, it becomes easier to approach recovery differently, not by doing nothing, but by reducing what the mind is being asked to hold. And that understanding sets the stage for why motivation fades, and why forcing it often makes things worse. Why motivation disappears. When people feel exhausted for a long time, one of the first things they notice disappearing is motivation. That can be unsettling, especially if you've always been someone who was driven, reliable, or able to push through when things got hard. Losing motivation can feel like losing a part of yourself. But motivation doesn't vanish randomly. Motivation is closely tied to available energy. When energy is low, especially mental and emotional energy, motivation naturally drops. This isn't a flaw in character. It's a signal from the body that resources are limited. The body doesn't remove motivation to punish you. It does it to protect you. When energy reserves are depleted, motivation fades as a way of slowing output. It's the system saying, we can't keep operating at this pace right now. And when that signal is ignored repeatedly, the body responds by turning the volume up. This is where pushing through often makes things worse. Forcing yourself to act when energy is low may work in the short term, but it reinforces the message that there's no safe stopping point. The nervous system learns that it has to stay alert, even when it's overwhelmed. Over time, that creates deeper fatigue, not renewed drive. This can lead to frustration and self-criticism. People start asking why they can't just do it, why their discipline feels gone, or why things that used to be easy now feel heavy. But motivation isn't something you can demand on an empty system. It returns when the body begins to trust that it won't be pushed past its limits again and again. When energy starts to stabilize, motivation follows, quietly, without force. This is why advice focused only on willpower often misses the mark. Willpower doesn't create energy, it spends it. Understanding this helps reframe the experience. Instead of viewing low motivation as a personal failure, it can be seen as information, feedback about what the body has been enduring. And once that feedback is respected rather than overridden, the system begins to soften. Energy becomes more available, and motivation returns not as pressure but as a natural response to having capacity again. How people used to restore energy. For most of human history, energy wasn't restored through optimization or constant effort. It was restored through rhythm. Life moved more slowly, not because it was easier, but because the body required it. Daily routines followed natural cycles. Work had pauses built into it. People rested not as a reward, but as a necessary part of staying functional. Energy restoration wasn't something individuals were expected to manage alone. Tasks were shared. Responsibilities were distributed across families and communities. When someone was tired, others often stepped in. That shared load reduced the need for constant alertness and made recovery possible in ways that felt natural. There were fewer decisions to make each day, fewer competing demands, less mental noise, and while life still came with stress, the nervous system had regular opportunities to settle. Rest also looked different. It wasn't always about stopping completely. Sometimes it was slower work, repetitive tasks, sitting together, talking, being present without needing to produce anything measurable. These moments allowed the body to downshift without pressure. Recovery happened in the background of daily life, rather than being something you had to plan, schedule, or earn. Over time, as life became faster and more individual-focused, many of these natural recovery supports disappeared. People began carrying more responsibility alone. Pauses became less acceptable. Productivity became a measure of value. The body, however, didn't change. It still responds to the same signals it always has: predictability, connection, and moments of safety. When those signals are missing, energy becomes harder to restore, no matter how much effort someone puts into resting. Looking back at how energy used to be restored isn't about wanting to return to the past. It's about remembering that exhaustion is not a personal failing. It's often a response to environments that no longer support recovery. Understanding this creates space for compassion, and it opens the door to rebuilding energy in ways that honor how the body actually works, even in modern life. What helps energy return today? In modern life, restoring energy usually isn't about adding more things to your routine. For most people, it's about removing just enough pressure for the body to finally settle. Energy often begins to return when the nervous system experiences small, consistent signals of safety. Not dramatic changes, not complete overhauls, just moments where the body no longer feels like it has to stay on guard. This might look like creating brief pauses between tasks, instead of jumping immediately from one thing to the next. It might mean finishing something and allowing yourself to stop for a moment before deciding what comes next. Those small pauses matter more than they seem. Energy also responds to predictability. When the body can anticipate what's coming, even in simple ways, it doesn't have to stay as alert. Regular meal times, consistent sleep windows, and familiar daily rhythms all help reduce the amount of energy spent on vigilance. Another important piece is reducing mental noise where possible. This doesn't mean stopping thoughts entirely. It means noticing when the mind is carrying unnecessary weight, replaying conversations, running worst-case scenarios, or holding responsibilities that don't need attention in that moment. Letting some of that go, even temporarily, gives energy a chance to rebuild. Gentle recovery also means listening differently. Instead of asking, "What should I push through today?" the question becomes, "What would help my body feel steadier right now?" Sometimes the answer is rest, sometimes it's movement, sometimes it's connection, and sometimes it's simply doing less. Consistency matters more than intensity here. Small, repeatable signals of safety teach the nervous system that rest isn't temporary or dangerous. Over time, the body begins to release its grip on constant readiness. Energy doesn't usually come back all at once. It returns gradually, in clearer thinking, slightly better focus, or a small increase in motivation. These changes are easy to overlook, but they're meaningful signs that recovery is happening. The goal isn't to force energy to return. It's to create conditions where energy feels safe enough to come back on its own. When recovery is approached this way, it becomes sustainable. And instead of cycling between exhaustion and effort, life begins to feel steadier. Not because demands disappeared, but because the body is no longer fighting itself to keep up. Gentle close. As we come to the end of this conversation, it's important to return to something simple and grounding. Being tired all the time does not mean you're lazy. It does not mean you're unmotivated. And it does not mean you're failing at life. Very often, it means your body has been doing more behind the scenes than anyone realizes, including you. If sleep hasn't been restoring your energy, if motivation has faded, or if rest feels frustrating instead of refreshing, that's not a personal flaw. It's information. It's your body communicating that it's been carrying sustained demand without enough opportunity to truly recover. And that deserves understanding, not judgment. Energy doesn't come back because you pressure yourself harder. It doesn't return through guilt. And it doesn't rebuild itself by ignoring what the body is asking for. It comes back when the body feels safe enough to soften. That safety is built gradually, through small pauses, through consistency, through moments where you choose to listen instead of override. None of this has to be perfect. None of it has to happen all at once. If there's one thing to take with you from this, let it be this. You don't have to force energy to return, you don't have to chase motivation, and you don't have to earn your rest. Rest and recovery are not rewards. They are part of how the body stays alive and functional. If this conversation helped you make sense of your tiredness, you're not alone. This video is part of a larger series focused on energy recovery, nervous system support, and learning how to live in ways that respect the body instead of fighting it. For now, take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. And remind yourself that slowing down isn't giving up. It's listening.